the stand up. I think it's going to be pretty hard to do this every single day, but like we legitimately are going to try. It's blocked on the calendar. We're going to show up for 30 minutes and we're going to do our absolute best, short of force majeure that prevents us from having one of these episodes. Anywho, welcome to another episode, dude. I think, today's topic, we're just going to talk about something. It's a little bit uncomfortable to kind of talk about because it's behind the kimono. And it really has to do with this moment of transitioning top talent that is in a contractor mode, 1099 contractor mode, into W-2 salary. And as a small business, we've done our best to generate predictable income. We talk about this regularly. Like, we built our entire tooling platform around this to compare project performance to financial performance. Like, we are laser focused on making sure that we don't overcommit ourselves, especially financially. And so you and me have always this concern, and we move quite slowly and deliberately when we think about layering finances or salaries or bonuses or whatever the scenario is that has to map to money. We're pretty deliberate and pretty cautious. And so we're in this moment. This is a real-time conversation. It's a little bit uncomfortable to have this conversation because it is actually a real one, but fuck it. I think this is what people actually really want to know, is like the inner workings of growing a small agency, and like, how do you provide gainful employment and job security to people, and how do you retain top talent? Because one of the hardest things that we go through is finding the right individual for the team. And it's really an intersection of so many different things. We're looking for unicorns. We're looking for people that we actually really like just general good matches on a personality level, on a work ethic level, on a quality of life and balance level. And of course, the skill has to be incredible too. And so when you find these types of people, how do you keep them? And we've had these types of people come and go, and we haven't been in a position where we can offer them some type of competitive compensation plan. And so we're met with this moment again right now. We have an incredible top team member, and we are interested in transitioning him from a 1099 contractor role into a full-time benefited employee of the business. And so what do you think, man? Like, where is your brain at? How are we doing this calculation? We can talk all about the good, the bad, the ugly, the tax burden, the liabilities, the PEO that we use, like all the different scenarios that maybe will help us process and get us to what the right move is for us and for the team and for the business.
Yeah. I'll get you right where I'm at. So I know what they're worth in the market, like if they went to go work for an Amazon or anything or a startup, and I know what we can afford, and those numbers are far apart. It's like just real talk, here's the problem that agencies run into, that a startup that's doing like a SaaS model software doesn't necessarily run into, is they've raised a bunch of money, they've allocated that towards salaries. They know what top talent costs. That's in their fundraise, blah, blah, blah. An agency has to live off of the money that it brings in. And so right now, this person is on a project, and paying them a good salary is possible. The problem I have is, what if the contract they're on leaves or needs to reduce, or hey, I need to cut to half, and then I need to find another project to move them into. And in agency, it never lines up exactly. And somebody once told us that people have about 40% downtime and 60, if you're a good agency, there's like a 40% downtime. We actually have a lot less downtime than that, which is amazing. But I got the PTSD in the back of my mind from years ago, when you have some downtime, and a lot of times you end up having to let an employee go, not because they didn't perform, but because you lost work. And this is, if you've ever, there's an old book called Confessions of an Ad Man by David Ogilvy, probably from like your grandfather's generation. And he, like, in the book, says that if you're a client of an agency, when you leave, you have caused that entire team that worked on your account to become unemployed. Like, he just lets them know flat out, when you leave your agency, everybody loses their job. Like, he's like, when an agency's growing, you're hiring new as those projects come in. It's very rare that someone leaves on the day you're going to sign somebody new. And then you can't, and every agency owner has a horror story, every single one. I don't care who you are, where you paid staff for longer than you should have, with the hopes that, oh, there was only going to be a month gap or a 2-month gap. It turns into a 3-month gap or a 6-month gap. And we have spoken to many agency owners in our groups, in our circles, that are like, I'm still paying off debt from a time that I did that. So unfortunately, real talk, customer leaves, you have to lay the team off immediately that worked on that customer, unless you happen to be in a position to allocate that talent to the next spot, which you very rarely are. It literally has to be the perfect storm of things. So right now, things are good. None of these customers that this person is working on are in any state, but the bottom can drop out at any moment, at any time. And so you need to pay this person appropriately, but you also need to leave money on the table to allow for like I always like to say, I want to be able to pay somebody for maybe 60 to 90 days of I don't have enough full-time work for you, but I'm going to try and find something, and I want to give that runway if something bad should happen. So you always sort of want to have like their salary plus what you're putting in escrow for that employee for something, even if that's even if that's severance, right? And that, as a small business, all this stuff is very hard, right? You hear about this, like Amazon laid off people, they paid them for a year after they left, or something crazy. You're not going to have a year severance as a freaking small business. Not only that, the IRS won't let you hold a year severance. They're going to tax the shit out of you on that money. So you're not going to get to hold that kind of money. So where I'm at is there's also another difficulty to this equation. And we talked about it, and we've advised people of this because we were originally an LLC, and a lot of people who are like us, you may be an LLC today, and then you get hit with the tax bill at the end of the year for what it means to be an LLC on your first good year. And usually that's the last year you elect to be taxed as an LLC. You'll see this all over the internet. You're like, oh crap, time to convert to an S corp. And as an S corp, as a C-suite executive, you need to pay yourself a reasonable salary, but real talk, it's usually in your best interest to be slightly less than reasonable with that salary. The minute you start hiring staff, it becomes a lot less reasonable to say that I make less money than my staff. And anyone who knows this knows there's a bunch of tax implications to this. You pay FICA on all of the income up to about $180,000. And so a lot of small business owners or S corps, they have a portion of it that's a salary that has to be considered reasonable. And then there's the other portion. Usually the advice that I have been given, I'm not an accountant, but it's usually about a third of the kind of profit of the business you can reasonably consider a salary. But the minute you start hiring staff, you have to start considering your salary against those salaries. And good software engineers start to creep up to that 180K line. And that then eliminates the advantages you were looking for from the S corp, and you start paying that heavy tax burden again. So these are things, and it includes your health insurance benefits. So like it's your salary plus your health insurance benefits. And even in a PEO system, you're paying for a family, we're paying like 30K each, I want to say, a year in health insurance. So it's a significant amount. All that is to say, this has brought us to the ESOP, the employee stock option pool, the idea of how can I incentivize people at an agency that is not going to sell. We're not going to go public. We're not going to sell and have a big payday like a SaaS product. Like agencies are typically not investable. But what we do have the advantage of is to share those profits with engineers when they're here. And if we have a bad day, well, we can all share that burden together. And so that's kind of where you and I had left off, which is what if there is a salaried portion, but then a significant portion of your pay as an engineer here is the profitability of the agency as a whole, which comes back to incentivizing people for, like, how do you incentivize people in the age of AI to use AI and use less hours when you're getting paid by the hour? So it kind of comes full circle, which is, well, actually, now we're also incentivizing you to finish projects of quality faster because the profitability of the business directly affects you, and we're willing to share a much larger portion of that. So that's my big monologue there behind the kimono, of course, so to speak.
Well, first of all, this is not tax advice, so we'll put that in there. I
Put
think
that in there. It's
what's
not
best
tax
for us is
advice.
not necessarily Right. It's not necessarily what's going to be best for you as the viewer for your business. Everybody's business is a little bit unique, and you have to do kind of what's best for your business. I think what's interesting about Cause of a Kind is we're highly profitable. So even though, we talked about our numbers from 2025, we're just shy of 1.2 million in gross revenue, but net revenue, the margin is somewhere north of 50%. So you could do one of two things. You could either share all that or you could pay taxes on all that. Whatever you would like to do, that's up to you. But like there are ways that you can leverage that margin and share that as an incentive with your staff, which limits your commitment to the base salary. And that's kind of what you and I are really thinking about, which is like, what are some creative ways where we can share the upside and get folks on the team motivated to ship higher quality, faster work and share both in the upside and the downside of just building agency life. The ESOP program is definitely an option. And I think this also is we're small enough and have built a team where we take everybody as an individual into consideration, and so opening this up to this individual to have a collective conversation as to where do they need to be, what is best for them, that's also available on the table too. Like we're just not making a decision in a vacuum, and they're going to help us to shape what employment looks like here at Cause of a Kind and what those options are to give competitive folks an opportunity to work here. So I don't know if we know the answer today. I think that's literally even part of the show, and we can keep visiting this topic as we get closer
I
to an
don't.
answer.
Or if you're a person who has ideas, comment please, because this is something we're struggling with because a lot of agencies skirt this by saying, I'm just going to get the cheapest talent I can find somewhere else in the world. We are not doing that. We've just taken that option off the table for ourselves. We don't even pay people in other parts. We've come out publicly and said we do not pay you based on location. So like this is not an option for us. So finding cheaper talent somewhere else in the world is not the option. The goal for us is to have top tier talent. How do we incentivize that? Now, I think one advantage we have though of the stock option thing is unlike your stock options at a startup that you're probably going to wait for years and years, maybe even decades to cash in on, we would do like quarterly payouts on this. So like you'd have your salary and you would have cash for that. The disadvantage is you wouldn't take those options with you if you left the company. So there's no that there, which is again doesn't make a ton of sense if you're not in a company that's planning on selling and plans on running for a long time like we do. So it's like as long as you're here, a portion of your salary is profitability, and I think it also helps too. And I'll say that there are times in the past when we've had to do a layoff that I never thought about this, but like, what if you had said to the employee, like, I have to do like a furlough? Like we talked about that, like I can, like your client, the project left. We love you, but we don't have work this month. Like, and we're trying, but we never considered, we did, well, we have had employees that have left and come back for exactly that reason, all on the contract basis, though. All were contractors, but we never considered that once we've moved people to W-2, it's always been all or nothing. And I've never considered this idea of like, listen, the project left, you are definitely free to find new work, and I'm here to be a reference and all of that. But unfortunately, until I sign a new project, we have nothing right here. So it's like that's really the risk that as an agency owner, you have to figure out how to mitigate. And there's no way around it, dude. That's the hardest part of running an agency is that that projects can and do leave sometimes. And sometimes it has nothing to do with your fault, your performance. We've had companies that we've been working with for years. They got bought by a bigger company who has their own engineering team, and they're just like, we like you, we love you, but we're out, and that's it. This is the agency life. So this was a good stand up because I implore people, please, like ideas. Like we love creative ideas on this because I feel like this is a messy space, and the internet is flush with you raised $1 million, get as good a talent as you possibly can, or offshore everything to the Philippines and get it as cheap as you possibly can. I would like people who have that hit that realistic middle ground to kind of engage with this video, because that's what we're looking for. And we are definitely like, I want people to have way more ownership that are here in the business, because I also think that like having them bring in leads, right? Like people are getting leads all the time and they don't even realize it. Having a friend or an uncle or a buddy who's building software, like, hey, you are now an investor in Cause of a Kind. You may not even be on that project, but you get to benefit in the profitability, because the profitability, you now get a piece of the whole pie, not just the slice of the project you're working on. So it's a very entrepreneurial take. It's not for everybody, and I still say, if you're a software engineer, I mean, you're probably gonna make a heck of a lot more money working for Netflix. Just saying, like the entrepreneurial path is not for everybody. That guaranteed income is sweet. Netflix, Adobe, Meta, all those places. But
That's assuming you can
for
get
the
that.
right, assuming right, assume that I like to assume that the people we employ can get that job though. So it's just, but there are other benefits we have here, like remote work, flexible schedule, that are not. And I definitely think we don't run like a pressure cooker of an environment like that, and our interview process is not like a freaking rectal exam. And it's not, like there's a lot of advantage. It's quite easy. Yeah, those are my thoughts, dude. I think that, you and I have some soul searching to do. We'll let you guys know where we land on this ultimately. And that's the next phase for us.
I'll leave you with this, which is, and you don't have to respond to this. We're going to respond to this over the next few episodes as we shake out this idea. But can you afford not to hire these types of people? Can you afford not to accommodate them in the way that you would like? And so we're going to answer that question by opening a dialogue and by being really thoughtful about how we create this. We also have other opportunities that we really did not really share about, which is we build our own products. We have other companies in the Cause of a Kind portfolio, and these individuals can be co-founders of those companies and share in the revenue and profitability of those businesses as well. And so it's not just a straight line compensation plan. There's also incentives on lead generation and gaining commission from things that you generate back to the business. There's lots of different ways that we're thinking about creating an employee incentive program. We'll shake those out over the next couple of episodes. But I leave you with, can you afford not to hire that individual? Thanks for the episode, dude. See you tomorrow.